Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to Ramadan Reminders by Sapience Institute. In the prophetic life in Mecca, the Prophet of Allah was surrounded by supporters and also antagonists, detractors who were hell-bent on preventing the furtherance of the call of Islam. In Surah Sad of the Quran revealed in Mecca, Allah gives us an insight on the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave instruction to the Prophet of Allah about what to do in this situation of being under such hardship. It's quite remarkable, in fact. In this ayat, Allah says, "Isbir ala ma yaqulun wadhkur abdana Dawud dhal aid innahu awwab." Allah says to the Prophet ﷺ, be patient with what they say against you. Meaning, have that sense of being optimistically patient in what they say against you. And remember our servant Dawud alayhi salam. Dhal aid innahu awwab. He had power, obedience to Allah, and he was awwab. Now it's interesting that Allah is introducing a prophet not from the landscape of the Hijaz where the Prophet of Allah was, but from somewhere else in Al-Quds, in Jerusalem, somewhere else he was based. But still the Prophet of Allah says, like later on he said that all the Prophets of Allah are brothers, their mothers are different but their religion is the same. So Allah says, be patient and remember Dawud alayhi salam. Remember him. He had power of obedience to Allah and he was awwab. What does awwab mean? Awwab means ar-raji ila Allah, the one always returning back to Allah, always going back to Allah, always asking Allah for forgiveness, always remembering Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's awwab. And Allah says in the next ayah, Allah caused the mountains around him and the birds above him to remember Allah with him in the morning and in the evening. And Allah says, Kullu lahu awwab. All of them were awwab. So amazing happening, subhanAllah. As therefore Dawud is traversing the world and transitioning through spaces, he's remembering Allah and Allah is making everything remember Allah with him. The mountains, the birds, all remembering Allah with him. Allah then goes on to say, some ayat later, Allah blessed him with a ni'mal abd, a pious son, Sulaiman alayhi salam. And Allah says, innahu awwab. He too was awwab. He too was ar-raji ila Allah, always returning back to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's a beautiful reminder here in that Allah is telling the Prophet ﷺ that even though you have these detractors, antagonists, and people hurling all these abuses against you, be patient and remember Dawud alayhi salam. In that how he was in life, in remembering Allah, Allah made the world remember Allah with him. And as you move through these spaces and continue with your journey, if you remember Allah, Allah will make the world remember Allah with you. And that's true. And as the Prophet of Allah was therefore calling his people to Allah, Allah made the world remember Allah with him. Each of his junctions, each of his journeys and stopping points, a point of remembrance, recollection, people will gather around him and Allah would make the world remember Allah with him. That's the key point. So therefore always remember, whenever you're feeling this sense of distance and you're feeling a sense of so much is happening around me, remember the Prophet's life was the most difficult life, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and a most difficult life, and calling his people to Allah and they're rejecting him and all this stuff is happening, commotion, noise, circus of events. But Allah is saying, be patient with what they say against you and remember our servant Dawud. And Dawud's point was to remember, continue to remember Allah, increase in that, do more of that, and Allah will make the world remember Allah with you. And that's the whole point. In fact, that's the instruction for Allah gives all of us as callers to His way. Remember that the more of dhikr of Allah you do, the more Allah will transform your landscapes and make the world remember Allah with you. May Allah make it true for all of us. Allahumma ameen.